It appears everywhere, yet almost no one truly sees it. A shape older than empires, carried through time like a whisper that refuses to die. A loop, a cross, a path, simple at a glance, but carved from the architecture of existence itself. The Ankh. Not a symbol of the past, but a reminder of something we once understood, and then forgot. What most people never realize is this: its meaning only reveals itself when you follow its trail through the sacred. The Ankh appears in the grip of gods, especially the gods of death. Anubis holds it at the threshold of the afterlife. Osiris sits on his throne, the Ankh of life beside him as he judges the dead. Isis extends it toward the dying, offering something that isn't air. So why did the Egyptians place this symbol, this specific shape, in the hands of their most powerful deities? What did they know about life and death that we've forgotten? This isn't a video about a pretty Egyptian symbol. This is about what the Ankh actually represented. The structure of existence itself, life, death, and the space between them, the place where transformation happens, where the soul either continues or dissolves. The Ankh is a map, a key, a diagram of something the Egyptians understood with profound clarity. And by the end of this, you'll understand it too. If you seek the truths hidden beneath our world, subscribe. This is Beyond Mythology. Let's start with the word itself. In ancient Egyptian, it was written with a single hieroglyph, the Ankh sign itself. Scholars also use a transliteration for the word. It means life, but not life as we think of it. Not biological existence, not the beating of a heart or the breath in your lungs. It means life as a force, as continuity, as the animating principle that persists when matter fails. This symbol wasn't a good luck charm. It wasn't something everyday Egyptians wore around their necks. When you find it in the archaeological record, it's almost always in the same context, held by gods, held by pharaohs, held by priests performing the most sacred rituals. There's a gesture that appears over and over in Egyptian art. A god, usually Horus, sometimes Thoth, holds the Ankh to the nostrils of the pharaoh, not his mouth, his nostrils, the place where breath enters the body. This is called giving the breath of life, but it's not oxygen they're giving, it's something else. Something the Egyptians believed could only come from the divine realm. The emblem became the instrument of that transmission. It doesn't represent life, it delivers it. The Ankh was the emblem of divine function. To hold it was to hold the power to create, sustain, and renew existence. That's why only gods and god-kings could carry it. That's why it appears in every scene where life and death meet. Because this symbol doesn't belong to one side or the other. It belongs to the threshold. The Ankh is ancient, older than the pyramids, older than the dynasties, older than written Egyptian itself. It appears in the pre-dynastic period, carved into pottery and painted on tomb walls, already fully formed. No evolution, no primitive versions. It emerges complete. Scholars have theories about where it came from. A sandal strap tied in a specific way, a ceremonial knot used in early rituals, an anatomical symbol, vertebrae and ribs, or even male and female reproductive organs combined. Some see it as a fusion of opposing principles, the circle representing the eternal, the feminine, the womb, the cross representing the material, the masculine, the structured world. All of these theories might be true, or none of them, because here's what matters. The physical origin of the sign may have been forgotten even by the Egyptians themselves, but the meaning, the cosmological architecture it represented, was preserved, refined, and embedded into every corner of their civilization. This sacred shape didn't need an origin story. It needed to work, and for 3,000 years it did. See the Ankh again with different eyes, as a structure. It has three parts: the loop at the top, the horizontal bar, the vertical shaft. The loop is eternity. It's the sun rising over the horizon. It's the portal between worlds. It's the part of you that doesn't die. The thing the Egyptians called the bar, the soul identity that continues. The circle has no beginning and no end. It's the shape of forever. The horizontal bar is the meeting point. It's where opposites balance, heaven and earth, spirit and matter, the living and the dead. It's the threshold, the moment of crossing, the place where transformation becomes possible. The vertical shaft is the path. It's the trajectory of the soul. Birth at the bottom, death at the top, and beyond that, continuity. The shaft doesn't stop at death. It moves through it. Put them together, and what do you have? A map of existence. The symbol isn't abstract. It's precise. Just as the yin-yang diagrams balance, just as the Christian cross diagrams sacrifice and transcendence, this form diagrams continuity. It shows you how life moves from the material, through the threshold, into the eternal, and then back again, endlessly. The Egyptians didn't draw symbols for decoration. They drew them because symbols were technology. They encoded knowledge. They held power. And this one encoded the most important knowledge of all, that existence doesn't end. It transforms. Here's where we need to recalibrate. When the Egyptians said life, they didn't mean what we mean. They didn't mean your body functioning. They didn't mean your brain processing thoughts. They meant something deeper. The animating force that makes a body more than matter, that makes a soul more than memory. They had a word for it, Ka, your life force, your vital essence, the double that lives alongside you and persists after your body fails. And they had another word, Ba, your identity, your personality, the part of you that is you and no one else. The Ka and the Ba separate at death. The Ka needs nourishment, food, offerings, sustenance from the living world. The Ba needs recognition. It needs to be remembered, to be called by name. And the Ankh appears in the moments when these two aspects reunite, when the dead are reconstituted in the afterlife and become Ankh, transfigured, luminous, eternal. This sacred shape doesn't grant biological life. It grants continuity across the boundary of death. Let's look at the myths, not broadly but specifically. At the exact moments when the Ankh appears, Isis, standing over the body of her murdered husband Osiris, holds the symbol above him. She doesn't use it to bring him back to life, not in the way we think of resurrection. She uses it to reconstitute him, to make him whole enough to conceive Horus, to give him continuity even in death. Osiris is often shown holding the crook and the flail, symbols of rulership and judgment, while the Ankh appears beside him as the power that sustains both death and renewal. The Ankh is never casual. It is placed with intention, marking his authority over the passage between realms. Anubis, the jackal-headed guide of souls, extends the sign to the newly dead, not to revive them but to grant them safe passage, to open the door that only he can open, to ensure they don't dissolve into non-existence but continue into the Duat, the realm of judgment and transformation. In the funerary texts, the pyramid texts, the coffin texts, the Book of the Dead, the Ankh appears at critical junctures, at the weighing of the heart, at the gates guarded by serpents and fire, at the moment when the soul must speak its name and justify its existence. In these scenes, it's never passive. It has a role, a purpose, always acting at the turning point, always marking the place where the fate of the soul is decided. Now we arrive at the core. The Ankh isn't just a symbol of life, it's an instrument of passage. Look at the art again. The shape appears in front of doorways, in front of gates, in front of the portals that separate the living world from the Duat. It's positioned like a key in a lock, because that's what it is. The Egyptians didn't see death as an ending. They saw it as a crossing, a transition from one state to another. But the transition wasn't automatic. There were barriers, thresholds that had to be unlocked, doors that wouldn't open unless you had the right tool. This was that tool. It doesn't represent the passage, and it enables it. This is why the gods hold it when they interact with mortals. This is why it's offered at the moment of death. This is why it appears in the hands of Anubis as he leads the soul through the underworld. The sign opens what is closed. It allows movement between realms. It grants access to what would otherwise be unreachable. There's a phrase that appears in Egyptian funerary texts over and over: to breathe eternity. That's what the Ankh offered. Not immortality in the sense of living forever in a body, but the ability to persist, to pass through death without dissolving, to continue being you on the other side. This is the key that unlocks continuity, and the gods are the ones who decide whether you get to use it. Let's return to that gesture, the one we mentioned at the beginning. A god holds the Ankh to the nostrils of the pharaoh. This isn't symbolic, it's ritual, it's precise. The Egyptians didn't do things for show, they did them because they believed they worked. The pharaoh isn't receiving air, he's receiving divine life, the force that sustains his role as god-king, the energy that allows him to function as the bridge between the human and divine realms. This gesture appears in coronation scenes, in temple reliefs where the pharaoh is reborn as a god, in the rituals performed to ensure his ka would survive death and continue ruling in the afterlife. In these moments, the sign is active. It's transmitting something, it's a conduit, a channel, a tool for moving life force from the divine realm into the mortal one. This is why the symbol had to be held by gods, because divinity could access the source. Divinity could deliver what it carried. It wasn't passive, it was a technology, and it worked by touch. Now let's step outside Egypt for a moment, because this symbol doesn't just tell us about the Egyptians, it tells us about ourselves. Human beings are haunted by the prospect of non-existence, not death exactly, but the idea of ceasing to be, of disappearing, of becoming nothing. Carl Jung saw this clearly. He studied symbols across cultures and found the same patterns repeating. In Jungian terms, the loop of this emblem represents the self, the totality of your being, conscious and unconscious, the part that exists beyond ego. The cross represents the ego, your material existence, your identity in the world, the structured self that navigates daily life. The union of the two diagrams psychological wholeness, the ego grounded in matter, held by the eternal self. Ernest Becker took this further. In The Denial of Death, he argued that all of civilization is a response to our terror of mortality. We build monuments, we create myths, we construct systems of meaning that allow us to feel immortal even when we know we're not. This ancient shape was the Egyptian answer to that terror. It didn't deny death. It transformed the relationship with death. It said, "You will die, but you will not cease." That's why it keeps reappearing in modern culture, why it's tattooed on skin, worn as jewelry, used in fantasy and occult symbolism, because it touches something deep in the modern soul, something that still hungers for continuity, for meaning, for the promise that we are more than matter waiting to decay. This symbol speaks to that hunger, and it always has. Here's what makes the Ankh unique among Egyptian symbols. It's everywhere. The scarab represents transformation, the Eye of Horus represents protection, the Djed pillar represents stability, the scepter represents power, but this one, it represents the force that underlies all of them. It appears in temples where life is celebrated, in tombs where death is prepared for, in coronation scenes where kings become gods, in judgment halls where souls are weighed, in initiation rituals where priests are transformed. This symbol crosses every domain. It unites every aspect of existence. Because the Egyptians believed that everything was part of a single continuous cycle. Life flowed into death, death flowed into rebirth. The gods sustained the living nourished the dead became gods, and this sacred shape was the symbol of that flow. It represented the structure itself, the framework that held the entire cosmology together. For the Egyptians, there was no division between sacred and mundane, between life and death, between heaven and earth. Everything was connected. Everything was part of the same eternal system. And this was the proof. It didn't just point to life. It was the shape of existence continuing, transforming, renewing itself endlessly. That's why it stands at the center, because without it, nothing else makes sense. So here it is, the truth. This symbol doesn't promise you'll live longer. It doesn't promise you'll escape death. It doesn't promise resurrection in the way we imagine it, coming back to this world, picking up where you left off. What it promises is deeper. It promises you won't disappear. The Egyptians understood something we've lost. They understood that death isn't an ending, it's a change of state. and they built an entire civilization around that understanding. They didn't fear death. They prepared for it. They lived their entire lives orienting themselves toward the moment when they would face judgment, when their hearts would be weighed, when they would speak their names and justify their existence. This sacred shape was their assurance that continuity was possible, that the threshold could be opened. But here's the part that cuts the deepest. It didn't guarantee survival. It guaranteed the opportunity for survival. You still had to live a life aligned with Ma'at, with truth, balance, cosmic order. You still had to be worthy of passage. The door could be opened, but you had to be able to walk through it. The Egyptians didn't want to escape death. They wanted to transform their relationship with it. They wanted to live in such a way that when death came, it wasn't the end of their story. It was the beginning of the next chapter. That's the truth behind this symbol. It's not about living forever, it's about living in a way that makes forever possible. This shape has survived longer than empires, languages, and civilizations. It remains because it speaks to something that doesn't change. We are mortal, and we don't want to be. We are temporary, and we long for permanence. We are made of matter that will fail, and we carry something inside us that feels eternal. This ancient emblem addresses that paradox. It doesn't resolve it, it holds it. It says, yes, you will die, and yes, something in you will continue. The two aren't contradictions, they're parts of the same cycle. It's not the answer, it's the question. How do you live knowing you are mortal and yet eternal? How do you orient your life toward continuity when everything around you is impermanent? The Egyptians spent 3,000 years answering that question. They built their entire cosmology around it. They encoded it into their art, their rituals, their tombs, their temples, and they left this symbol behind as a reminder, not of what they believed, but of what they knew. That life doesn't end, it transforms. And if you live with that understanding, if you carry this truth not in your hand but in your heart, then when the threshold appears, you'll be ready. This isn't a symbol of the past, it's a portal, and it's still open.